To understand the news today, we often have to look at a map. Let's find the Middle East. There, on the eastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea, you will find a small strip of land. This land is home to both Israelis and Palestinians. For decades, it has been the center of a long and difficult conflict. One key part of this conflict involves Israel, a country established in 1948. The other part involves Gaza, a very small and crowded territory. Gaza is home to over 2 million Palestinians. These two places are right next to each other, but they feel worlds apart. Their shared history is filled with disagreement. Their shared history is filled with fighting. Their shared history is filled with deep-seated pain that affects every aspect of life. Israel is a modern nation with a strong economy and a strong military. It is a parliamentary democracy often called the Jewish state. It has major cities like Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. Many Israelis feel a deep historical and religious connection to this land, tracing their roots back thousands of years. For them, the creation of Israel was the fulfillment of a long-held dream. It was meant to be a safe homeland for Jewish people after centuries of persecution around the world. They see their country as a beacon of democracy and are determined to protect its security and its citizens from any threats. Gaza, on the other hand, is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. To grasp the situation today, we must look into the past. Before 1948, the land was known as Palestine. It was under British control after the fall of the Ottoman Empire in World War I. During this time, two powerful nationalist movements grew. One was Zionism, Palestinian nationalism. Both had deep roots and strong claims to the land. As more Jewish immigrants arrived, tensions with the local Arab population began to rise, often leading to violence. The British struggled to manage the growing conflict between the two communities. The turning point came after World War II. The world was horrified by the Holocaust, in which Nazi Germany murdered 6 million Jews. This tragedy created immense international support for a Jewish state. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a plan. The plan was to partition Palestine into two separate states, one Arab, one Jewish. The city of Jerusalem was to be a special international zone. Jewish leaders accepted the plan and saw it as a historic opportunity. However, Arab leaders and the Palestinian population rejected it. They argued it was unfair to give so much of the land to a minority of the population. On May 14, 1948, Britain's control ended. Jewish leaders declared the creation of the State of Israel. The very next day, armies from neighboring Arab countries, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, invaded. They aimed to prevent the establishment of Israel and support the Arab Palestinians. This was the start of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. By the time the fighting ended in 1949, Israel controlled more territory than the UN plan had proposed. Egypt took control of the Gaza Strip, and Jordan took control of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. The war had a profound and lasting impact on the region. For Palestinians, this period is known as the Nakba, or the catastrophe. Over 700,000 Palestinians fled or were expelled from their homes in the territory that became Israel. They became refugees in neighboring lands including Gaza, the West Bank, Jordan, and Lebanon. The dream of a Palestinian state was shattered. These events are not just ancient history, they are living memories. The stories of lost homes and villages are passed down through generations. This sense of loss and the demand for the right of return for refugees remain central issues in the conflict to this very day, shaping Palestinian identity and political goals. The 1948 war was not the end of the fighting. It was the beginning of a series of major conflicts. Another key moment was the Six-Day War in 1967. In the late 1980s, a new phase of the conflict began. A spontaneous Palestinian uprising known as the First Intifada erupted in the West Bank and Gaza. It involved widespread protests, strikes, civil disobedience against the Israeli occupation. It was during this time in 1987 that a new group was formed in Gaza, Hamas. Hamas is an acronym for the Islamic Resistance Movement. It emerged as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. From its beginning, Hamas had a dual purpose. It provided social services like schools, clinics, which made it popular. It also had a military wing which carried out attacks against Israeli soldiers and civilians. The 1990s brought a wave of hope with the signing of the Oslo Accords. These were a series of agreements between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, creating the Palestinian Authority and raising hopes for a two-state solution. However, the hope of the Oslo Accords eventually faded. Hamas and other militant groups opposed the agreements and launched attacks. On the Israeli side, settlement expansion continued. A second intifada broke out in 2000, destroying trust. In 2005, Israel withdrew all soldiers and settlers from Gaza. After Hamas won elections and seized control of Gaza, Israel and Egypt imposed a strict blockade, severely restricting movement of people and goods. The blockade imposed on Gaza in 2007 has had a devastating impact on daily life for its more than 2 million residents. Israel says the blockade is necessary for its security. It argues that it needs to prevent Hamas and other militant groups from importing weapons, materials to build tunnels or rockets. From this viewpoint, the restrictions are a defensive measure. Egypt also controls its border with Gaza at Rafah, often keeping it closed. The combination of these controls has effectively isolated Gaza from the rest of the world, creating what many describe as an open-air prison. The economic consequences have been catastrophic. The blockade has crippled Gaza's economy, collapsed industries, and left most people dependent on international aid. People who were once self-sufficient now find themselves without work or hope. The humanitarian situation is dire, with limited access to water, electricity, and medical supplies. Gaza's infrastructure is crumbling. For children who make up nearly half the population, the psychological toll is immense. The restrictions on movement mean most have never left Gaza. This lack of freedom and opportunity creates a deep sense of hopelessness and despair. It affects an entire generation's mental health and outlook on the future. Since Hamas took control of Gaza in 2007, a devastating cycle of violence has taken hold. This cycle typically involves rockets being fired from Gaza into Israeli towns, followed by major Israeli military airstrikes and operations in Gaza. There have been several large-scale wars, notably 2008 to 2009, 2012, 2014, 2021. Each round of fighting results in tragic loss of life, mostly on the Palestinian side, widespread destruction of homes, schools, infrastructure. For Israelis living near Gaza, the constant threat of rocket fire and air raid sirens creates a climate of fear and anxiety. Triggers for escalation include events in Jerusalem, tensions around holy sites, border protests, Israeli raids in the West Bank, or targeted killings of militant leaders. Hamas often portrays its actions as resistance. Israel frames its military responses as self-defense, aimed at stopping attacks and degrading Hamas's capabilities. One of the most intense recent conflicts occurred in May 2021, triggered by evictions and clashes. In late 2023, a large-scale attack by Hamas led to a massive Israeli response. As of today, in September 2025, the situation remains incredibly tense. The blockade, occupation, and lack of a political solution are still unresolved. The Israel-Gaza conflict receives a huge amount of global attention. One reason is its deep connection to three major world religions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam. The land itself contains sites that are among the holiest for billions of people. The conflict plays a major role in international politics and diplomacy. The US is Israel's strongest ally, but other world powers also have big stakes. At the United Nations, resolutions are discussed and often vetoed, revealing deep divisions. Media and technology have amplified the conflict. Images and stories can spread worldwide in an instant. Social platforms are a key battleground for public opinion. Both sides use them to share perspectives and rally support, but that also fuels rapid misinformation. The conflict touches universal themes: human rights, justice, self-determination, and refugees' rights. That's why protests appear in cities around the world. It's a human story of two peoples with competing claims and aspirations, and many view the outcome as a test of the world's commitment to peace and justice. For decades, the most widely discussed solution has been the two-state solution, an independent state of Palestine in the West Bank and Gaza, living side by side in peace and security with Israel. This solution has been the official goal of most international peace efforts, but there are major obstacles: borders, Jerusalem, settlements, and the right of return for refugees. Some propose a single democratic state, but trust is lacking. As of 2025, the peace process is completely stalled. Current efforts focus on humanitarian aid and ceasefires, but the root causes remain, leaving the future uncertain. As we look at the situation today, it is easy to feel a sense of despair. The cycle of violence seems unbreakable. Yet, even in the darkest of times, there are reasons to hold on to a sliver of hope. It comes from the people themselves. Two children, one Israeli and one Palestinian, planting a small olive tree together in a field. The future of this land will ultimately be decided by its people. Will the next generation be condemned to repeat the mistakes of the past, or will they find the strength to write a new chapter of peace? Close on the olive tree planting, small hands covering soil, a sapling in the ground.